Hello, everyone, and today I'll be reviewing a novel called Tell the Wolves I'm Home, written by Carol R. Brunt. The book was published in 2012 by Random House LLC, and it has a page count of 360 pages, which I found as a coincidence because my channel is named Windows 360. So if you haven't liked or subscribed, that would help me out tremendously. So when I was thinking about making a book review for this book, I had the idea of making a spoilerless review, but that idea just kind of fell out, and I've just decided to just make a full-fledged review and my opinions on it. So at this point, I would issue a spoiler warning. So if you were thinking about buying this book and reading it later on, I would advise you not to watch the rest of this video. So without further ado, we'll get into the book review. So as far as a brief summary of the book, the setting takes place in the 1980s amongst the AIDS crisis in the United States, and we'll see later how the AIDS epidemic plays a central role in the plot of this book and how it correlates to the characters. Now, the main protagonist of this book is June Elbis. June is a 14-year-old girl who has a close relationship to her uncle. Now, June is not an only child, which brings us to our next main character, her sister Greta. And as far as the first quarter or first half of the book, Greta plays kind of a minor background role, but towards the end she comes into play with the plot and the story. Now going back to another main character that I mentioned was June's uncle, Finn. Finn is a renowned painter who, in the beginning of the book, died from AIDS, which is pretty much a central point. The plot of the book kind of revolves around this point in the death of June's uncle and how she copes with the death throughout the rest of the book. Now this brings us to the last main character we'll talk about, Toby, and how he came about in the story. It's later revealed in the story that this guy was Finn's boyfriend, and Toby came around kind of like, I'd say, a quarter of the way in the book, and Toby and the main character June form a friendship, and they learn how to cope with Finn's death throughout the book. Now, as far as the end of the book and how it wraps up, I thought about going into a good discussion of this, but I don't want to really cover it that much, just in case people who are watching want to go back and buy this book. Well, the end of the book kind of comes clean, all the secrets come out, and the characters become transparent, and there's no secrets left to keep. Now let's talk about my opinions of the book. Now, when you first pick up this book and read the back, it's like, what is this? Now, reading through the first half of the book was kind of a struggle, but once you start digging deeper into the themes and the character development, the relationship development between the characters, you kind of get a deeper appreciation of this book. As far as the writing and the writing style of this book, I think it's phenomenal. It might not have been one of my favorite stories to read, but this is probably some of the best writing skill I've ever seen in a book. Carol Brunt did a tremendous job in her descriptions, in her formal writing, and in the characters. Her writing was just phenomenal. Now, one of the themes I looked at and I enjoyed reading about was the theme of AIDS and gay relationships in this book. It was just interesting to see how in the setting of the 1980s, when not a lot of people knew about AIDS and what kind of sickness it was and how it spreads and the prejudice against that, and of course homosexual relationships, it was just interesting to see how that kind of played out in that time frame. Now I want to talk about what kind of spoke to me. The part I enjoyed the most was the emotional development of the characters. Now I'll start with the character development of June, the main character. She starts out as a 14-year-old girl, just growing up, not only physically, but also emotionally. Especially having to cope with a family member's death, I feel that it kind of emotionally matured the character. But as far as that goes, I couldn't really sympathize with this character personally. Only emotionally in the fact that she had to do geometry homework. I know that kind of sucks, it was definitely not my favorite. Now, what's interesting in the latter half of the book was the character development of June's sister, Greta. She kind of went from honestly just being an asshole, kind of delving into her emotions and seeing how she was emotionally disturbed and seeing her coming clean in the end was just pretty eye-opening. It kind of gave me a different perspective on things and people, who have been assholes to me in real life, and just kind of puts a perspective on trying to see where they came from. And finally, I kind of like the character development of their mother in the end of the book. Now, her mother and her father kind of played minor roles in the book. They were gone, they worked as tax accountants, and in the book, most of the content takes place during quote unquote tax season, so they didn't really play a huge role in the plot. But as far as my opinion in the book, now I know it wasn't one of my favorites, definitely not my favorite book, and some of it was a struggle to read, but after I finished it, I did enjoy it to an extent. I'd say like it wouldn't be a waste of money to buy this book and read it if you wish to do so. But that wraps up the first book review on my channel, and if you liked it or enjoyed it, I would greatly appreciate it if you left a like on my channel. Thank you guys, and have a nice day.